four-time Miss Olympia Jay Cutler. Welcome to my channel, Jay Cutler TV, and make sure to stay in tune with the newest and updated videos. Subscribe below, guys. Thank you so much for following along.
Welcome guys to the newest Be Built by Broser here at Gold's Gym Venice. Starting the show today by showing you guys a new tricep movement using a cable. It's an overhead tricep movement which will basically work or target the long head of the triceps, the sweep of the triceps under the biceps. Again, we're just targeting, we're not isolating. And the setup for this movement is something I want to show you first because it's pretty unique. So we're starting here, upper cable. We're going to use a rope today. You can try other bars. I prefer the rope. And what we have here is the bench. This is set up in front, and a little pad for the leg just so that you're not hurting your knees on the floor. And what's going to be happening is going to be kneeling in front of the bench. I'm going to have Dave demonstrate it for you in a moment. He's going to be kneeling in front of the bench and placing the arms on the bench, and it's going to be an overhead tricep movement. We're going to get a good stretch at the top, a good squeeze at the bottom. And one thing I'd like to point out that I try to mention often is that even though a lot of these movements that we do for different muscle groups are similar in motion and range of motion, anytime you change the angle of the body, anytime you change the angle of push or pull, you will work slightly different motor unit pulls or slightly different sets of muscle fibers. So these are all ways of just making sure that you hit muscle groups completely, that you exhaust all muscle fibers so that you can reach your full genetic potential. I'll have Dave show you this movement now. Excellent for the triceps. Okay, so as you can see, it's got the rope, kneeling down in front, similar to a position of like a cable crunch. He's got his arms positioned on the pad at the very, very end. The elbows are towards the end so he can get a full extension at the bottom, and so he can get a full stretch at the top. He's keeping the hands together at the top. This is something you can actually experiment with if you want to try to separate the hands at the bottom, but today we're doing this fully on hammer style. The weight is medium. We're looking for somewhere about 10 to 12 slow reps, about 3 seconds on the negative, 1 second at the stretch position, 1 second at the positive, and a 1 second hold at the squeeze. He's working the entire triceps, but actually we're targeting, like I said, this tricep head, long head, that you can see is striated right there as he comes down to the bottom. Just another unique movement for the triceps using a cable, and another way to exhaust different motor unit pulls, different sets of muscle fibers, so that you can reach your full genetic potential, and just so you can have interesting workouts, not doing the same things all the time, which can get boring and can stagnate you both mentally and physically. It's going to get a few more reps here, and that's it. That's how you do that movement. We'll just call that a kneeling overhead cable tricep extension.
Hi Merlin, we are at the Mecca, and this is Ask Merlin Monday, even though we're Tuesday.
That's true.
And we're inside today because
the questions came in on Monday.
That's right, because it's not very nice outside, so we're actually going to shoot here in that little eating area at Gold. So you got some good questions this week?
Yeah, a couple that I'd like to address live here on the show. First one was from Mark Ramsey, and he's brought up some questions before, and I like this question because it's contest season now and everybody's doing shows every weekend. He wanted to know, even though he understands that it's an individual by individual thing, what do I basically have my athletes eat before prejudging?
Fries and burgers.
And it's not fries and burgers.
Oh, damn.
I reserve fries and burgers till after the show's over.
Okay.
But I'm going to answer this in a few different ways, or a few different parts. First of all, one of the things that I don't like to do in general is give people foods on the day of the show that they haven't been eating for the last 16 weeks, because you don't know how the body's going to react to it. So my preference is to not have to do anything overly special before prejudging. I want people to wake up pretty much ready the morning of a show, so that they can stick to a fairly normal diet, depending on what they look like. Perhaps if they've woken up in the morning and they need a little bit more fullness, maybe I'll go a little bit higher in carbohydrates if I feel that They can stand to lose a little bit of water. Maybe I'll go a little bit lower, but again, I try to keep the foods the same. One thing I do like to do is use a carbohydrate powder on the day of the show, especially if it's something that's been used throughout the prep. Something like All Max's Carbion is what I use now. And what we do is, instead of using the powder in full amounts of liquid, which generally would take like a scoop per like 8 ounces of water, you use a very little bit of liquid and you make it into a paste. I've done this with you before, Dave, with other carbohydrates.
It's good.
And it works really well. It's very, very concentrated. And the reason why I like Carbion from All Max especially is because it has several different types of carbohydrates that all assimilate at different rates. So some of them get into the system very quickly, and some of them get into the system over time, and then some take a really long time to get in the system. So it gives you a nice balance of carbohydrates. You don't get a spike too quickly, and you have good energy throughout the prejudging. So you just mix a little bit of water into it and make it into like a little bit of a paste, and like a pudding almost, and you just kind of use that as your carbohydrates along with a protein. And another thing that the All Max Carbion has in it is several natural ingredients that also help the carbohydrates get into the muscle cells a little bit faster and more efficiently. So it's a great powder for this process. Now, there are some people that I've had before that I do know, after doing several preps with them, that they react well to certain types of some junk food before prejudging. And some people happen to react well to sugars. Some people react well to fats. Some people react well to sodium. And this is something that I'm usually able to discover after working with people for a period of time. Again, I'm not looking to do anything crazy. Some people will have a big, tremendous cheat meal before prejudging. I don't believe in that. I'm talking about like maybe before pumping up, having like a small, if sugars work well for you, or I've decided to use sugars, something like a brownie or a cookie, something small, just to get that into your system. For some people that works really well for giving them a pump and for just filling that a little bit more. Some people don't react that well to sugars. They actually do better with fat. So something higher fat like some cashews or almonds or peanuts or peanut butter works well for them. And also, believe it or not, even though most of the time we're worried about sodium the last couple of days before a show, for some people this makes them go flat. You have to watch that. Pulling sodium out of the diet, even though it helps to dry you out, sometimes also pulls some of the fullness out of the muscles. And this is something you have to watch for as a coach. So if I see this happen, and I know that we're getting close to the time they have to get on stage, and I can look at their body. Sometimes I can see that they need a little bit of sodium, so I might give them something to eat that has something with sodium, like maybe like pretzels or peanuts that have some salt on it and things like that, and that will help to fill them out really quickly. So you are right when you say this is an individual thing. It is very individual. As a coach, you have to know your client very well and what they react to. If you don't have a coach, you better figure it out for yourself, because if you eat the wrong kind of a food before prejudging, it can blow your entire condition by either spilling over or holding too much water or not filling up enough. But really, the overall thing that I'd like to get across to everybody is that you want to wake up in the morning of the show pretty much ready, and the smaller amount of adjustments you have to make on show day, the better off that you will be. So just be prepared and try to have everything prepared so that you wake up on show day all ready to go, and you're almost eating your normal meals on the day of the show. Maybe you're cutting back by water a little bit. You don't have to cut it out completely, but you're still sipping on water. And if you can get that done, then you know that you've hit the perfect peak on the day of the show.
Okay, Biggie, what else you got?
So again, like I said, we're in contest season right now, and Fentress Lane, he asked me about the different kinds of rice in like a pre-contest diet. Do I think that it makes a big difference whether you use brown rice, white rice, jasmine rice, wild rice? I think this is something that you also have to discover for yourself. I think some people do really well using one type of a rice or another type of rice. Speaking specifically about rice, I have some clients who generally find that when they eat brown rice, it bloats them. They don't digest it very well, but for some reason they're able to digest like a white rice or a jasmine rice very, very well. Some people do worry about the glycemic index of the rice, and I do believe this does have some credibility to it, in that if all things being equal, if you digest all kinds of rice relatively well, Then I would reserve brown rice for your general meals, and use like a white rice, which has a higher glycemic index, almost as high as sugar in some cases, for a post-workout meal when you want to go with an insulin spike. Now, of course, always remember that we're pretty much always having protein along with our carbohydrates, which always brings the glycemic index of any food down, because glycemic index is going to be determined by just having carbohydrates without any other food. So and when every time I add our protein or fat to it, brings it down. So I think you need to discover for yourself what types of rice works best for you. And I think that this goes for all types of carbohydrates, because it even carries over to things like sweet potatoes versus baked potatoes versus other types of potatoes, red potatoes, those kinds of things. Everybody seems to react a little bit differently in how they digest them, whether it bloats their stomach or not, how well it helps to refill their glycogen stores. Some people do really well with hot cereals like oatmeal. Some people do better with like an Ezekiel cereal. Some people do better with like cream of rice. So you need to experiment with these different things and figure out what works best for your body. But as a general rule, if you seem to digest everything well, and we're talking about rice here, like I said, go for the higher glycemic rice post-workout, and something with a lower glycemic, like a brown rice, at earlier meals, so that you don't get that insulin spike. So great question, Fentress, and again, figure it out for yourself. And if you don't have a coach, the coach will figure it out for you.
Thanks, Biggie.